would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom?
Welcome to Anti-Tyranny News Radio here on UCY.TV. Thank you for joining me this evening. Oh, one thing came across my news feed. Antiwar.com, U.S. Marines headed to South Afghanistan to slow Taliban gains. Says here, with the U.S. seeking to slow the mounting losses by the Afghan military in the southern Helmand province, the Pentagon has announced a deployment of roughly 300 U.S. Marines to the province, with the fighters expected to arrive by the end of the month. The deployment marks the largest single deployment of U.S. Marines in occupied Afghanistan since 2014, which reflects the Afghan military's growing woes in combat. These troops will join smaller numbers the U.S. had already deployed into the area, who were normally advisors. And while officially the new Marines are also advise and assist troops, they are being sent in a non-combat role. Colonel Matthew Reed confirmed that the Marines are always deployed with a combat mindset. Given how poorly the Afghan military has done on its own, it wouldn't be surprising to find the Marines in combat situations. Large number of U.S. and British soldiers were deployed in Helmand earlier in the war, but officials had withdrawn them largely in the transition away from direct combat missions since then. Helmand has been among the major targets of the Taliban, and they've captured large portions of the province. And we thought we were getting something different with Trump. No, just same old wars that we had under Bush and under Obama. Still involved in the Middle East. And he really told people this. You know, I have some people that they want to make up excuses. They were anti-war when Obama was in office, but now that Trump's in office, they're pro-war all of a sudden. Then you have the other ones that blame Obama. So, well, you know, he never took care. Hold on, You're saying the guy that you said shouldn't be involved didn't do enough, therefore that's why Trump. You're making up excuses. What we're seeing is that my guy's in charge, so I'm going to not criticize the things I've said in the past that I disagree with. Do you disagree with them now? Do you think we should go at war? Let's say Obama was doing the exact same thing. you would be against it. You should be against it now. Not only that, is what is it really going to accomplish? What is our, as you know, American citizens that want to claim, well, we need to take care of the problem. What is our end game with the Middle East? To prevent them from attacking us. Well, why are they attacking us? Because they hate our freedom. Try again. Could it be that they don't feel like they're in charge of their own country? That the only time that a government is allowed to exist is as long as the American government likes them? You think about it, how many of us think that, our government has become tyrannical? Maybe not as bad as some other countries, but we believe that, our government has become tyrannical, and it's on ever, moving scale towards more tyranny. But there'd be no way in hell that we would be okay to say, let China or Russia come in and just start. They tell us, we warned your government, we're coming in now. We wouldn't be okay with that. We wouldn't be okay with Russia or China coming in going, we'll get rid of your authoritarian dictatorship there, yeah. We'd be like, yeah, put in your own, no thank you. And that's what people in the Middle East feel like they're facing now. So what would be the correct way? Well, we've already went over there. We have, taken out the authoritarian side. Only to find out it was probably the least, dictatorial government that they could have there. Because now what we're getting is something that's 10 times worse. We're going to dive into Ron Paul Liberty Report covering the troop surge here to Afghanistan, and is this something that will work? So let's go ahead and dive into that.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams. Daniel, good to see you today.
Good morning, Dr. Paul.
Good. Well, the country of Afghanistan is in the news again. It's been there for about 16 years, ever since we went in there, and we were going to try to do something that no other nation ever did, is conquer the locals in Afghanistan. They've been trying maybe up to 1,000 years or more, and it never seems to work. And we helped make that point, in the 1980s to help throw out the Soviets. And yet, here we are. Nobody ever seems to learn a lesson. We're over there. And Trump, you thought maybe he'd have a different foreign policy, but it's the same old stuff. He's planning, he announced 300 Marines. That's not much, but it's escalation compared to what we were supposed to be doing. But I think that is interesting, but they're also talking about a lot more. If you look to the CFR, Biddle at the CFR, who has a reputation for exacerbating wars and things, he says that's not enough. We need 100,000 troops to send in there to really conquer these people. So I think we've tried that before. I think, I think under Obama, they tried to have a surge, and people still claim that the surge worked, but I think there's some challenges that could be made to that.
Yeah, ironically, the same person you're mentioning, who was one of the advisors to Petraeus and McChrystal and Admiral Mullen in the first, the second, or however many the surge was in 2009, where they sent in 100,000 troops. They said that this is going to be successful. We're going to finally defeat them. Obama said it'll provide us with an exit strategy by putting these troops in. We finally pulled them out in 2012. And Defense Secretary Leon Panetta said the surge did achieve its objectives. And now it's only been a few years later, we got to do another one. But, we have a map just to show you what's happened since this great surge that we were supposed to win. And when we get it up, I'll tell you, now this map was put out by the Taliban. So, we can expect maybe there's some exaggerations. But if you look at the area that's black, that's 100% Taliban control. The area that's red is 70 to 99% Taliban control, and the area that's orange is 40 to 69% Taliban control. Now, the green areas is where the Taliban have minimal presence. But if you look at the totality of the country, after 16 years of war, it doesn't look like we're doing too well there.
No, sure it doesn't. Although the CFR is asking for more troops, push more troops in the econs in Congress, senators and congressmen think it's exciting and they like it. And they say that we're pleased that Trump has been coming their way and is being much more aggressive. But I think it's interesting, if you read exactly what Biddle was saying at the CFR with these 100,000, it's almost a confession of defeat, because he said, what we would like to do, if we have a lot of troops there, we could influence the Taliban and convince them that what we're doing would look like a victory for us. Just put them out there, have an agreement, we leave, and it looked like a victory for us. And all I could think about was the shenanigans that went on as the closing down of the Vietnam War after not even this many years, where they went to Paris and they had this agreement and they say, we'll walk away with our heads high and there's a victory, and both sides agreed to stop the war. Of course, the communists were in charge by then. They continued the war and after a couple of years took over the whole country. So, but this is all they're talking about. I mean, I think they've given up on it, and yet they're going to send 300 Marines. And some people don't like to be defeated. That was one of Nixon's problems. Well, and LBJ, I don't want to be the first American president to really lose a war. I'll tell you what, after 16 years, they have to do some adjusting. And I don't think that this talk is going to do enough. I think they've given up on the fact that we are going to sort all that mess out that you just showed. 500,000 troops won't do the trick because they don't understand the history. They don't understand the people. It's a mess there, and it's a mess for the American people, too, and it's a mess for our military and people who think that this has something to do with national security interests. The only thing that looks like they could, exaggerate and say, oh, well, it is because we need this pipeline. We need this oil pipeline to go through Afghanistan, and that's national security interest. But we tell the kids they have to go there and expose their lives to this. Oh, well, we're fighting to protect our Constitution and our liberties. A far stretch. I think people are going to wake up. Unfortunately, I don't think that Trump is exactly the person that's going to back away from this. I think it might, on the short run, exacerbate it, and this may get worse before it gets better.
And the thing is, even if we, quote, win in Afghanistan, we lose. And part of that's because of the presence of ISIS. Now, ISIS wasn't there before 2015. All of a sudden, they've started to set up some shop there. The more we fight the Taliban, the more space grows for ISIS to infiltrate the country. So if we defeated the Taliban in Afghanistan, it wouldn't be Switzerland. It would be ISIS. So there's no way to win. And I think it's important to remember that ISIS and Taliban are mortal enemies. They hate each other because of their different views of religion. ISIS views a sort of a caliphate that extends on Islamic law. And the Taliban have always been a tribal and nationalistic form of Islam, and they hate each other because of that. ISIS views the Taliban as being, less pure Muslim because they are nationalistic. So they hate each other. They don't like each other. And it reminds me of Syria, because we're fighting both ISIS and the main enemy of ISIS at the same time.
You know, I think all what you described so clearly is a result of an ambiguous foreign policy of why we're at war, but we're not at war. We don't declare the war, but we talk about the war, and the war goes on for 15, 16 years. We had a war in Vietnam, a war in Korea, but it's not a war. We don't win the wars. We always lose these wars one way or the other. And I think it's this schizophrenic attitude that we have this so-called moral obligation that they convince the American people of, and yet there's financial interest that continue this policy. But I think the presidents, whether it's Obama or whether it's Trump, I think they're at the stage where they know that, yes, we have to do this, to protect the status quo of the deep state. But we don't want to have to send in 500,000 troops and win the war, because our national security is not threatened. If we were being threatened, every American would help defend this country. That's not the case. So they have this pseudo war going on, and they believe, and Trump's great at this, bluster, intimidation, scare the living daylights out of them, coerce them. And he's claiming that this is working with China. China's backing down. Of course, he gives in, and it's bluster is what it is. So when did it start? A week or so ago, when they thought, well, we're going to teach those rebels up there in Syria, and we're going to launch 59 missiles at this airport. And it wasn't a military operation. It was an intimidation. This is a warning to. And then, of course, Moab, the big bomb, never dropped before. We're going to teach us that Taliban and ISIS, all this trouble that was directed at ISIS again. Yeah. So now we're trying to find out what's in there, and we're not even allowed in there. The American troops won't let anybody go in and inspect. Who did you kill? What did you do? Well, we do know they blew up a bunch of tunnels, at least. Tunnels we built when we were on the side of the Mujahideen, the Taliban. So we're in there blowing these tunnels up. When will it ever end? But the intimidation never stops. So this is serious, but it's almost hilarious. And that is, we got to scare that guy in North Korea. That guy is dangerous. He is. He's dangerous to mankind because he's so irrational. Militarily, I don't think he's a danger to anybody other than his own people, and maybe the South Koreans and maybe the Japanese, that they should be able to handle that. So the bluster man comes along, and we're going to intimidate, and we're going to scare this guy. So we say we're sending the SS Vincent to him. What happened there? Well, the ship pulled out of dark, and they went the wrong way. So what's going on? Is the intimidation going to backfire on them? I would think that Un may be laughing. He's, they're going to send the vessel. They don't even know which direction they're going. Ron Wave Kerrigan, what's happening?
Yeah, it is. It was comical that we're expecting a war at any minute. A few days ago, they're sending the Vincennes up there, and we're going to start attacking. And there is sort of an intimidation factor. There's also a way of psychologically intimidating even Americans, that a war can happen anytime. It doesn't build up. There's no rational start. But, I was thinking something that's interesting. When we first attacked Afghanistan, my oldest son was in diapers. And if this surge starts and it continues, he'll be eligible for a draft if it comes back. That's the entire length of his life. Yeah. He may be drafted into a war that he was in diapers when it started.
And you mentioned that people get to the point and they build up this atmosphere. Anytime something can happen. But, there's some truth to that, because things might not go as they expect. They might not, the enemy that we're directing this activity toward, they might not be intimidated. It might just stir their interest. They might know that we're not going to send the troops in. And I don't think the Taliban is expecting 500,000 troops and that they're going to be wiped out, because you'd have to wipe out the whole country, because that's the way they've lived. I've told the story before about when I visited in Pakistan right on the Afghan border. It was explained to me, look up those mountains, and they look totally barren. And the locals told me, they said, there's a lot of tribes up there, hundreds of thousands of people living in there. And he said, and they've never been conquered. And that was mentioned to me in 1963, 64. Wow. And every time this comes up, I keep thinking, but that's just recent history. People can go back and think 1,000 years ago, we're going to conquer Afghanistan. And here we are trying to conquer Afghanistan. And it just doesn't seem to be working very well.
It just shows, they feel that they're fighting for their homeland, and they fight hard. One of the problems, the surge was supposed to, the U.S. troops were supposed to go in, but it was also supposed to really bolster the Afghan army that we put together and we financed. We put billions of dollars to build. But the fact is, when we came in with this 100,000 troops, instead of them adding to the force, they actually backed off. They got lazy. They didn't fight. And it's the same thing now. They feel like they're hired mercenaries, whereas the Taliban have the will to fight because they're fighting for their way of life. Whether we agree with it or not, there's that sense that instills in a soldier and a warrior a different ethos, I think.
There was a time when we had propped up Karzai. And I remember clearly, you do too, he came and spoke to the Congress. Yeah. He was the
standing ovation.
The hero, going there. And but he spoke out in the last week. He said, "What are you guys doing?" He's probably more independent-minded than ever before, but he was criticizing the dropping of this bomb not being, a worthwhile event to solve any problems whatsoever.
He said, "You're using our country as a testing ground for your new weapons," and it's hard to disagree. And he told the people, "You've got to kick the Americans out of here." So that's he might not have long to live.
That, of course, is always has the moral high ground, the people that come in. And I've said before, and it would apply to us too, let's say there was truly an invasion, where troops are coming in, anything similar to what we do in another country. Do you think Republicans and Democrats would even exist? I think we'd all be fighting, to keep the people out that came in and invaded, especially if they were different people, and we are different. We're Westerners. We're from Europe and we're from the United States, and we go over into this country and they've had a way of life. Yeah, it may not be what we think is best, and we think we're going to teach them democracy. What a farce. And I think the sooner this whole policy in that whole region on our side comes to an end, because I see nothing positive coming of this. I see zero chance of us having what is considered a military victory in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, any of these places. It's just not going to work because we're going to run out of money and we're going to run out of support. And there's going to be too many people pile up on us if our dollar keeps going downhill like it is right now. Financially, we can be weakened enough where people are going to stand up to us, and that's going to be a different ballgame.
Yeah, and my takeaway would simply be that Trump has given free rein to the generals to fight this war as they wish, but he has not given them any guidance because he doesn't have guidance. He doesn't have a sense of what the end goal is, so it's a lose-lose scenario for the U.S.
I believe that's absolutely true. And we also have our vice president going over there talking to the Japanese and also to the Koreans. And I keep thinking, well, both the president and the vice president, they are the individuals that didn't volunteer to go fight wars that they could have been involved in. They seem to avoid that. So I don't know whether they qualify as being chicken hawks, but they certainly are people that are aggravating and precipitating and setting the stage for more militarism. And when I see John McCain getting excited and saying and smirking about the idea that Trump has come over to the neocon side, that's troublesome because politically that gives us more of a challenge in this country. We need people to think more clearly about what a foreign policy would be like and should be like if we followed non-intervention, mind our own business, deal with our problems, but not get involved in the internal affairs of other nations or border disputes or religious wars that have been going on for years. It's foolhardy, and no matter what they claim that there's going to be a financial advantage to us, because if we can't get the pipeline through Afghanistan, we're going to get it through some other country and do all these things, and we're going to squeeze the Russians out. It's such a foolish policy. It's time it came to an end. I think we are getting closer to that because more and more people agree with us. They're not hearing this message elsewhere, but they do agree that it's about time we change the foreign policy, and that goes for Republican leadership and Democratic leadership, and it goes along with the fact that the American people are sick and tired of wars, spending, and the deficits that we have run up. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.
Ron Paul Liberty Report, RonPaulLibertyReport.com, and Ron Paul Liberty Report on YouTube. Check them out. Subscribe. So, you know, they mentioned that Trump has basically gave the generals free range to go after ISIS, Taliban, you know, basically just kind of gave them the go-ahead in the Middle East. Gave the military-industrial complex the go-ahead just to do what they want. And we get, you know, the mother of all bombs, and, you know, you get all this war that just starts breaking out. We're going after ISIS. We're, you know, dropping this bomb in Afghanistan. We're doing all this, and then Trump's wanting to also, show force against North Korea. And, you know, they mentioned that, you know, he's not giving leadership because he doesn't know what the end game is. He doesn't have an end game. He has, the only end game Trump has right now is, I want to be powerful. I want to show power. I don't want other countries to stand up to me. That's what I get as his end game. This is what he wants to show the world. But militarily, there is no end game other than to look powerful, which opens the door to about anything when it comes to war. That's a dangerous path to go down. You have to have an end game militarily. Okay, we have bad people in Afghanistan. We go in there, we declare a war. We go, hey, there's two fractions now in Afghanistan, the current government and the rebel group, Taliban. We declare a war. We go in there, we wipe them out, and we get out. Sign a treaty with the current government and pull out. And people are like, why should we get involved? We really shouldn't be, but we have been. We have been without a true declaration of war. We've been here way too long. You're talking about, 16 years. And of course, we're not in combat role. If we're there, we're in combat role. We still have bases in many countries that we're supposedly not at war with. A lot of these people, other than, training, they go over there, They train, do their little job, and then they're off the clock. They go around, go to the mall, go out to eat, go to a museum, meet women. Are they doing that in Afghanistan? No, we're still in a war. $16 years. We have no guidelines for having true exit strategies to wars anymore. It used to be that we didn't want to be. We were, oh, you guys are isolation. No, there was such thing as, yeah, there were isolationists. There are still. But most of the people that they call isolationists are non-interventionists. They say we shouldn't be involved over there as much as, oh, what's all over the news? Oh, Russia shouldn't be involved over here. We talk about Russia involvement in our elections. But are we not always involved in elections in other countries? Are we not involved in the overthrow of elected governments to have a new election ran by groups that are associated with the United States? It's kind of time for Americans to, as citizens, to tell our government, listen, we don't want to hear crap about Russia being involved in our elections while we're still running around the country. When they try to bring up Russia might have been involved in your elections, no surprise. No surprise. When we tend to stick our nose in everybody else's election. We think we should have a say in whether Britain leaves the EU. I think they should. There's lots of people in government positions that like the whole world government view, that ideology, and they see the Brexit as something just heinous to their cause. And they think that the U.S. should not trade with Britain if they leave the EU, that they must be a part of the EU to be able to trade with. And we're not, we're supposed to be worried about Russia's involvement in our elections? Well, yeah, you probably should be worried if it's true. But at the same time, if you're not calling out the crap we're doing, then we're just being hypocrites. We're not standing on the principles we believe. If you say you believe that Russia should not be involved in our elections, you say a outside government should not be involved in our government elections, then hold your government to that same standard. We are involved in way too many affairs of other countries beyond the Middle East. We're going to have to just keep an eye on what's going on around the Korean Peninsula, with China, with Russia, but also in the Middle East now, we're going to have to worry about even more involvement in that. But on top of all this, what are we seeing by the left? We're seeing a war at home. And of course, you have the Trump people joining in on that. Lately, we just had, over the weekend, not a lot of news covered it, but Berkeley. Anti-fascist protesters, which they're not anti-fascist because I don't think they think fascism is completely opposite of communism and socialism. Well, socialism either leads to fascism or communism. Both come from the same spectrum of authoritarianism, which is more authoritarian than we already have right now. And it leads to dictatorships, because to achieve that, you need ultimate power. And, the left thinks they'll be able to institute it with the type of government we have now, as long as they're in charge of everything. Because unlike the Republicans, when the Democrats get the House, the Senate, and the White House, they tend to just start passing crap. They're very rank and file compared to Republicans, where you do have Freedom Caucus and stuff that is towards maybe a freer side of the spectrum between freedom and authoritarianism. The only difference on the left side is you have people that just want full out socialism now, and the people that are willing to take it slow. And the ones that want it now, even though they want it now, they'll go along with the slow and steady because, well, they don't really have much of a choice, because they're still working on the same end goal. I want to play an interview. Stefan Molyneux was able to speak with Lauren Southern. And this is about free speech and the battle for Berkeley. And it's funny that you always see the anti-war left, but what we see out of the left is a war on your neighbor. Well, we can't wage war across the ocean, but we can on our neighbors. Again, they have an end goal and they don't care how they get to it. But here we go.
Molly, Freedom Radio, here with a good friend, Lauren Southern, an independent journalist and the author of Barbarians, How the Baby Boomers, Immigration and Islam Screwed My Generation. Please follow her on Twitter, twitter.com/Lauren_Southern, also known as the Chief Valkyrie, a.k.a. Queen Boadicea of the Battle for Berkeley. Lauren, nothing I can say is going to match what you have to say about what went down today. Just give us the A to Z. What happened?
All right. So we showed up ready for a rally for free speech. Honestly, I wasn't even sure if I was going to be able to speak. but I was, and the police had assured us that there would be an abundant presence there. And for a while there, I thought, wow, we're going to be fine. The police are here. We're good. But as soon as Antifa started setting off M80s, those little explosives, poof, where did the cops go? Oh, they're all gone now. And it was open season on Trump supporters. But this time round, unlike the other times in Berkeley, Trump supporters came prepared. Despite the fact that police had disarmed them for the most part, they came prepared with their fists. So while Antifa were throwing rocks at us, were throwing M80s and fireworks at us, Trump supporters were running in there and fighting them fist for fist. And everything seemed like it was pretty even going steady. It was just kind of no one was pushing either line until there was one turning point in the battle for Berkeley, like any epic battle has, where Antifa set off a smoke bomb, and it was supposed to come and surprise attack us. They were going to flank us from the side, but they miscalculated because the wind was going in their direction, and everyone was at the same moment. I think I heard someone beside me say, "Those fucking morons," and everyone sprinted forward and just. It was a massacre. Is quite frankly what it became.
Now, did you actually get a chance to speak today?
I did get a chance to speak, but there were only a few people that were listening, and everyone else was kind of like on the battle lines, just yelling at each other because it was pretty heated over there. So we did get a chance to speak, which was cool, and I feel kind of bad for the event organizers because obviously Antifa brought their music to blast and were throwing stuff, so it kind of distracted from the speaking, but we did get to speak, although briefly.
Now, so after you finish your speak, I guess you have a bit of a tendency, as I've seen on your videos, Lauren, to head towards the fire, as the saying goes, rather than away from it. What was your personal involvement? What did you see? And, based on what's going on with your face, what happened to you?
Well, I had amazing security. First of all, I had some guys that had volunteered from Proud Boys and a couple other groups that were staying there with me, pushing anyone away who tried to come after me, because there were people staring at me. They're saying, one guy was Richard Spencer, and not just punch him. She's an awful person, shrieking at me. So they knew who I was. So I had these guys there to protect me, pull me away from the But it was hard to avoid the bear mace in the air. And it's important to know media are going to report that the air and the tear gas and all that wasn't from the cops. The cops had pieced it at this point. The bear mace was from the protesters. It was from Antifa. No one on the Trump side had bear mace because the cops banned us from having bear mace and anything to defend ourselves. So it's basically the typical disarm the good guys kind of act. We were all disarmed, couldn't have mace or anything. All the Antifa, I think Kyle Chapman got bear mace straight to the face. It was horrible. There was women screaming with it all over their faces and everything. So I didn't even think this would come in handy, but it did. And my helmet and everything. They were chucking, along with the bear mace, they were chucking giant rocks, which was pretty horrifying. So we had to be yelling, rock incoming, brick incoming, explosive incoming, so people could clear the way. One guy got hit in the head and blood, it was horrifying. There was blood literally spurting everywhere, all over the cement. And this guy was just like, he's like, I don't know what hit me. I don't know what hit me. And it's just all over his face. It was actually like really, really scary stuff going on there. I had to get dragged out of a lot of situations. I don't know what I would have done without my security there, honestly. So those guys were absolutely amazing. But it was a battle zone. It was a battle zone. We were telling each other, get to that position. Everyone back up. Everyone move forward. Antifa were doing the same thing, flank them from the side. It was a literal battle on the streets of in person.
Sorry, I'm just waiting for the internet to catch up here for just a second. It was a battle for the streets of Berkeley, and I've seen some of the videos of the rocks. They're coming in from very high, coming in from 20 or 30 feet, big chunks of masonry and bricks. I don't know what the hell they were, but man, I mean, that lands on your head. I mean, you could very easily be killed. And so there was, to me at least, the deathly ordnance floating around in the form of this stuff.
Absolutely. And it's what I was thinking about that. I'm like, I hate communists as much as the next person, but I wouldn't want to kill one of them. They may hate right wingers, but the idea that they would be okay with the idea of chucking a rock that could murder someone is just unreal. And I was walking through the streets of Berkeley just before this event, and there's a sickness here. All of the buildings, everything around the campus, it's all spray painted Antifa zone. This place has a sickness of extreme communism, extreme radicalization, unlike anywhere else. And an opposition to it was necessary. When the police won't stand up for people's free speech and right to assemble, then you have to oppose it, and that means with your fists. So that's why when I saw, well, I'd like it to be with your words, and I don't want this to be the state of political discourse right now, but I feel that all of the Trump supporters that were fighting back were completely justified in what they did today.
Did you, I mean, it's hard to know for sure, and maybe it will come out over time if people try and get the information from the cops. But Lauren, did you get the sense that the police they had a stand down order? I'm sure a lot of the police would like to deal with this because they know where it leads if they don't step in, and whoever's initiating the force, if they take those people away, they know there's going to be street fights, there's going to be Weimar style street fights. Do you get the sense that the police wanted to help, whether they had stand down orders, or what's your guess about that?
Well, they were arresting probably just as many Trump supporters as they were Antifa. Based Elbow Man from Huntington Beach was arrested. I'm not sure exactly what he was doing then. Stickman was arrested as well. But you saw at one point that they all started waving, "Get out, get out." There was a little siren that went off, and I think they were probably given a stand down order. I mean, I can't imagine when they're all prepared in riot gear, that they, especially moral police officers, would feel justified just sitting in their police car, which they were. They were all like in little buses, just sitting there the entire time in their squad cars. I can't imagine that there wouldn't be cops there that wanted to be out there protecting people, because there were women and innocent people getting hit and maced and everything that were just walking down the street. And there's no doubt in my mind that there were cops that did want to be out there, but they were probably given a stand down order.
Now, you, of course, saw, as did all of us, the gathering storm around this free speech rally that was going on. You saw the posters, the hysteria, the Nazis, the violence, the threats. What was it like for you, Lauren, to prepare yourself for this? What were your mindset and your thoughts and feelings, walking up to that microphone, knowing what could go down?
It's crazy because a few days ago I was going out and I was laughing because I was at Home Depot picking up a freaking respirator and picking up a helmet and even thinking of picking up shin pads. I was laughing because I'm like, Lauren, you're exaggerating. What are you doing picking up this stuff? You're being dramatic. And I was like, I might as well have it. I get there and I totally needed it. 100%. Like I felt so bad for my security guys that didn't have masks, because when the pepper spray came in at all of us, I had my mask and it was still coming through. And you can see my makeup is all down because it was painful as all hell when it got into my mask. And I needed that stuff. The fact that I needed to go and buy a respirator, a helmet, and a face mask to go to a political event in America, it just shocks me. I'm still trying to get over the fact that I just had to go and buy that stuff to go to a political event, let alone what actually happened at this event that is now making nationwide headlines.
And a political event, I was just talking with Mike Cernovich as well, Lauren, a political event where the arguments being put forward, the ideas being put forward are far from radical or extreme. What are we talking about? Free speech, freedom of association, freedom of assembly, and so on. This is not radical stuff. Nobody's talking about anything immoral or illegal or inciting riots or anything like that. But people are talking about, maybe it would be kind of cool if America decided to enforce its existing laws, around immigration and other things. The Overton window, in terms of how this debate has been moved, you all are being portrayed as extremists when the majority of people in America voted for just these platforms. This is not extremism that's being opposed, but centrism.
Yeah, I mean, you had gays for Trump speaking there and Hispanics for Trump speaking there, like the groups themselves, and all sorts of people attending this event. You can't even try to pretend this was some sort of alt-right event, because most of the people there would be kicked out of an alt-right event that were attending, or a far alt-right event, whatever you want to call it. I can't. The only way that I can try to explain what has happened here is you've got all of these unstable, mentally ill teenagers that have been radicalized by their media and by their schooling and by their government. And they came out there, and it was sick. The fact that the people there were willing to murder someone and cheer it on along the way. And they were, I can't even explain. It was a plan as well. It was a party. They had music blasting the entire time. They were dancing and saying, F you, we're going to punch you. It was so sick, Stefan. I can't even describe it. I mean, you just have to watch the videos, but being there in person is even more intense, obviously.
And the thing is, too, I mean, I don't think people really understand, unless you're doing work in the intellectual field. It doesn't have to be on the right. It just has to be not far left. Whatever you're doing in the political field or as a public intellectual, as a reporter, that's not far left is subject to just this kind of attack and assault. And I'm really getting sick and tired of people not understanding this. Not understanding that the left, the federal left, is trying to dominate the discourse and drive centrists out of political discourse, drive anybody they disagree with out of political discourse through threats of violence, death, assault, macing, or even murder, with this masonry coming down from on high. The shutdown of contrary speech to leftist ideology is vicious. It seems to be unrelenting. I'm damn glad that there was a pushback today, but I think people really need to wake up and understand the damn danger that's in their midst.
Absolutely. And I think it's going to be really scary to see how the media reports on this. I've just turned on CNN a little bit, and they're already reporting fake news saying that the police were there stopping stuff. That didn't happen. They were told to stand down. They weren't there. So interesting to see how the media spin this, because you're right. The wider public is not willing to admit that we have militant communists shutting down people that disagree with them in the streets. They aren't willing to talk about this sickness and problem that is on their side of the political spectrum. And until that happens, things are going to get worse and worse and worse. And this Berkeley rally, I think, was just the beginning of where our political discourse in America is headed.
Well, of course, it is going to expose the media, because my guess is that the very best reporting you're going to get from the mainstream media is something like violence mysteriously erupts at Berkeley free speech rally, and it's going to be like, well, who could possibly unravel who started it? It was a melee. There's no way to know. You're like some exhausted parent with their kids are bickering. It's like, I don't care. You're just both in the wrong.
The media literally came up to me and asked me, they were like, do you guys start these events just to make the left look bad? Do you start these with hopes that the left will attack you? I feel like you do that. And I was just sitting there like, no matter what we do, they're going to show up, lady. Like, it doesn't matter what we do. It doesn't matter if I'm walking on the street. They will show up. It doesn't even matter if that is or isn't our goal. They're showing up here, and you should be reporting on that, not trying to ask if there's some insidious plan from our side, because it always has to be our fault, right?
Well, this is sort of like asking the woman who's trying to get away from the abusive husband, do you just try to escape to make him angry? Do you just try and escape to make him look bad? It's like, are you kidding me? I thought that you weren't supposed to be responsible for your own victimization. Oh, right. Sorry. If you're not on the feral left, then you're always the instigator and you're always the aggressor. And if you're on the feral left, well, you're always a victim no matter what happens. And I hope that this narrative is becoming clear for people, because, man, I mean, if it escalates from here, I mean, I think people are going to be very surprised at how far this kind of stuff can go. If the government won't enforce the laws, if the First Amendment can't be exercised, if people are going to submit to violence and justify violence on the left and the mainstream media, well, where's this going to go? I mean, what choice do people have? There's no way that people who want to express their political opinions are just going to tuck their tails under their legs and go home.
Yeah, and this happened in a place where you're not allowed to carry guns. What happens when this kind of ideology starts making its way to places where people are armed? What happens then? I mean, there's only one logical conclusion of where this is going to head until this is addressed.
Now, where do you think where do you think the benefit can come out of in terms of what people can talk about? I mean, there are going to be people who watch this broadcast who are going to want to look away, who are going to want to turn away, who are going to want other people to do the fight for them. But this is a societal-wide verbal fight. Let's try and keep it in the verbal arena as long as humanly possible. What would you suggest that people get out of this altercation, of this conflict, so that they can spread the right kind of message to those around them to begin to delegitimize some of this aggression from the left?
Well, I think I actually think that the amount of people that showed up this time, this is one of the first Berkeley rallies where Antifa were outnumbered by the right wingers. So the amount of people that showed up to show their support for free speech caused for the right to be on the upper hand. And Antifa wasn't able to shut them up and beat people to the ground bloody. They still got some people, but it was certainly less horrible than other times, or if they had been the majority. So showing up to these events and showing your support, of course, don't bring your family kind of thing. But this is something, free speech is a right that people have died for to make this nation and give us these rights. Getting punched or maced in the face is, I personally, for me, it's something that is so little to give up for a right as big as free speech. So the numbers, the pure numbers that are showing up to these events to support our rights is so important. And the fact that we overcame Antifa and were able to defend ourselves without the police there, I think is a phenomenal. This kind of stuff isn't what I want to see, but if that's where Antifa is going to take it, then I'd say we can't stand down. We have to keep standing up for our rights. I really hate to say that, but it's just, I think, the fact of the matter.
Well, appeasement now is going to lead to far worse things down the road. So, you know, in general, this was the lesson that's been learned over and over again through history, that appeasement with extremism only fuels extremism and destroys the middle. And if the left conquers the middle, then you will start to see some extreme right. And then people will say, oh, my goodness, this is so shocking. But it's been provoked by the indifference of the media, the indifference of people as a whole, and the left's aggression. And I just want to remind people, like, when you hear about this news, people will be talking about it at the dinner table, at the cooler, on the bus. Don't ever just say, well, it's equal on both sides, or there seems to be this weird, mysterious political aggression. It's very clear where it's coming from. Look at the posters for this free speech event, and look at the posters that were put up in opposition to it. The extremism, they're all Nazis. I mean, next we're going to have like baby eaters. Anonymous is going to be considered where you guys congregate. It has to stop at the verbal degree. Sorry, I don't mean to overcome your experience with my speechifying.
No. It's perfect. Even though far-right people do exist, there are people, like very few, but far-right people do exist. White nationalists, Ku Klux Klan people, sure, they exist, but they're so small, and it's so, you never see feminist art galleries or all these things getting raided and shut down and set on fire. You never see this happen the other way around. You never see tons of college students coming with far-right views beating the crap out of Hispanics. It doesn't happen. So the fact that anyone can say both sides are in on this, and the media will say that, they will. Well, I'm 100% confident they're going to come out and say this equal stupidity from both sides. But the fact that anyone can say that, it is a complete and utter denial of reality and the facts at hand.
Right. I mean, it's like they're going to say, well, you guys knew where you were going. You knew what kind of provocation, so you deserve the violence. But I never heard that said about the people who went to the South to register blacks to vote in the civil rights era. I mean, the murders of those people were horrendous and horrifying, and nobody would ever say, well, they knew what they were getting into. They knew the culture. They deserve the violence. It's a monstrous. And I was just thinking about this. I posted about this the other day on Twitter, that the left, the mainstream media is always referring to people like Marine Le Pen and so on as far right, but they'll never refer to North Korea as communist, which is exactly what it is. And I think that's all you need to know. So what's the aftermath like for you, Lauren? How's it for you? I mean, it's quite an adrenaline high. This is a lot of combat. What's it like afterwards? Because I think people fear how they're going to feel after this kind of altercation, but I think most people will find it's not nearly as bad as they think. But how's it been for you, sort of coming down from this level of intensity?
We're all going out for drinks. We're all going to party. We won the Battle of Berkeley. This is great. And you know what? Even the guy that got hit in the face with like a brick and was bleeding everywhere, he was lying down like, what? I have to go to the hospital? No, I don't.
I don't want to miss a thing, right?
Yeah, I don't want to miss a thing. No, there were some damn patriots out here fighting their asses off. And the ones, they got pepper sprayed in the face, they got punched, they got things thrown at them, and all of them are being real sports about it, and we're going out for drinks. I think Cernovich is buying everyone around. He sent over some money to Baked Alaska, so that's going to be, he's a top lad. It's going to be a good day. This was a victory. I mean, it sucks that this is the position we're in, that we're having to fight, but nonetheless, celebrate when you can. make an excuse.
Better now than later. All right. Well, I won't interfere with your social plans for the evening. I'm very glad that you're relatively well. I'm glad that the battle went well and heroic all around for the people involved who were on the right side of this and on the right side of history. Just wanted to remind people to check out Lauren's great book, Barbarians, How the Baby Boomers, Immigration and Islam Screwed My Generation. Twitter.com/Lauren Southern. Thanks so much for your time, and I hope you stay safe for the rest of your time out there.
Thanks so much for having me.
And that was Stefan Molyneux, Free Domain Radio, and Stefan Molyneux on YouTube. Check him out, subscribe. Now, you know, I don't know what the free speech event exactly was. Basically, the word had been out already that these people were going to show up to disrupt any type of event that was trying to set up for like free speech or anything that had any connections to the right. Because any connection to the right is fascism. And we're communists. If we're going to fight over fascism or communism, these are, let's say that these are the only two choices you have, communism or fascism. Yeah, don't look at me. You're asking me to, you want the red apple or the green apple? They're both poison. Which one do you prefer? Neither. I'm good. You can keep your communism. You can keep your fascism. But you both just leave me the hell alone. Because again, we got poison apples. Which one do you want? Green or red? Does it really matter? You're asking me to take a poison, and it's not happening. And that's basically an argument that makes no sense. Because you're basically arguing for the same thing, just who's going to be in control and how is that control going to be exercised. And, they brought up a good point. You don't ever see any of the mainstream media on the left say how North Korea is communism. They don't say the communist country of North Korea or nothing like that. They say the dictatorship in North Korea. They don't call Venezuela. Venezuela is a socialist country which has a communistic dictatorship. They don't want to call it communism. It's communism. It's socialism exercised through communism, authoritarianism. You're just, it's all flavors of the same thing. If you had a scale, freedom on the left, authoritarianism on the right, you would just communism, fascism, socialism because it would be the first one below communism, fascism, because that tends to always be socialism. Let's bring in socialism. Oh, how are we going to bring that in? And that's where it leads to the dictatorships that either come out as a, whatever flavor of fascism, communism, just the dictatorship. And that would be on the authoritarian side. Somewhere on the left of the middle is where I would pit, the American Constitution, the Constitution of the United States. It would probably be, if you start from the left, it'd be a quarter way. It'd be in between the halfway mark and the full freedom. And then libertarianism, anarchism, that's the far left. Different flavors of the same thing, trying to get to that end goal. I don't want my end goal to be some dictatorship that the world has never seen before. Because that's what you get when you get towards that authoritarian side. Full authoritarian would be a world dictator. What are we fighting for? Now, again, I'm not saying that's what the right at this Berkeley event was about. I'm, saying that they want to call them, the left is calling themselves anti-fascists. They say that, these people on the right are fascists. I don't know, this was supposed to be a free speech event. I hear free speech, I'm thinking, okay, why would you protest against free speech? Definitely if you're anti-fascist. So the thing is the left showed up and they were there to cause damage. They showed up to wage a war. And, they mentioned in that clip that, sticking up for yourself. The thing is they also talked about how the left loves to play victim. They are always a victim. And it's funny how, even though they always want to play the victim, they're the ones that show up and disrupt and cause violence. Not saying there might not be people on the right that do it, but not in the organized, true extremism type war that they wage. And this is not something that's new to the left. Shoot, look where the left stem from. And these little trendies out here, hipsters out here that are on the left that, they think they're so cool and those Republicans are racist and fascist. And hey, I'm sure there's a little bit of that on all the sides, but your party, the party that they tend to always go with, the Democratic Party, the hipsters that were crying because Hillary didn't win, that think they're so anti-racist and anti-homophobes and transgender. They're not against transgender. They're for all this. Join the party that tends to divide people and was born out of the hatred for other groups. It was the white, slave owner. KKK became its biggest under a Democratic president. That the first movie they played in the White House was a racist movie portraying the KKK as good people. So try that boot on for size. all the things that a lot of these young hipsters and trendies like to think that, their side should, rightfully take credit, we end of slavery and all that. Everything they'd like to try to take credit for because, they've been dumbed down or miseducated, don't realize 99% of that was done by Republicans. It was the Democrats that fought that. And the same old guard that was around then, they would have been, some of the younger guards. Now the old guard are still there, in charge, run the Democratic Party, shape the policy, and praise a lot of those, figures, ideological figures that spouted off the racism, the bigotry, the hatred for people that were different and threatened their power, threatened their status. And the thing is they'll play victim. They do all these tactics, then they play victim. They're racist and they're trying to hold us down and, put us back into slavery. When it's funny when you see a whole bunch of white people yelling that. It's kind of awkward at the same time. When you look at it, their policies would put them into slavery along with everyone else. I don't think the right is centered around principles that they once were, but I don't think the Democratic Party's changed at all, other than their PR campaign. But all this, they're going to play victim, man. The moment the right defends themselves, that will be blasted across mainstream media to prove the point that the mainstream media will talk about all the way up to that point. They won't cover, the left activists and what they do. They'll cover what the right does in response. And, Lauren Southern brought up, what happens when this gets in a place that there are guns. Well, one, the left don't want to actually have to, face any actual, threat. That's why they come heavily armed to an unarmed event. But when it does, they're going to use that for gun control, for tracking of people. And if it succeeds, government will have, you think, your Fourth Amendment, your Fifth Amendment, all that stuff is, threatened now. You haven't seen anything. Add the Second and the First, and just the Constitution will not even be argued anymore. We'll be so far away from it, even though I believe we are now. We'll be so far away from it. That fictional piece of paper, no, that's actually what our government was founded on. So that's what, our government's, argument for existence is the founding of this country, which here lays out rules. Oh. Well, that's a nice story. Have you convinced anybody it's true? We'll be that far gone. Look at the generation right now that's coming up and how so miseducated they are. And the thing is, miseducation has been around for a long time, but it's always been a twist on reality, a spin on reality. This generation has a belief in what history was without any actual knowledge of any history that backs up their belief. This is a Common Core generation. That is what it's become, a Common Core generation. They have answers for these questions, what should the government do? They have answers. And they don't have to actually back it up with any evidence. Here's your answer. This is why you believe that answer. Your belief has nothing to do with anything, factual. 2 + 2 = 5. How did you get that? Because I like the number 5. Well, you explained it. What? No, it's 4. Oh, no, well, it's whatever they say it is, as long as they have explanation. And the media. These media outlets are playing it. They're playing into it. And they can sit there and argue they're not, but they are playing into it. When they refuse to call a country communism, a country that practices communism, they won't talk about it. Socialism, no, we can't talk about that. We reword things. Can't say Islamic. Why not? Why can't you say Islamic terrorist? Because if there's a group of Christians going around and doing terrorism, people are like, well, there you go. The United States go. No, you're talking about a very diverse military. There's multiple religions. Can't say that's a Christian. But if you have some pretty radical Christian groups here in America, and if they decided, we're going to go in and start, taking out other religions, I would call it Christian terrorism. They're using their belief in their religion to wage war. call things what they are. That's how you find out what's a good idea and a bad idea. When we start hiding the facts of the situation, and they purposely do it, they're trying to manipulate reality. So the kids don't know history. They're being told how communism and socialism are great. At the same time, the media will refuse to call North Korea a communist country, or, Venezuela a communist or socialist country. They used to call it a socialist country before a communist country, until socialism started collapsing. Then they just, let's not talk about Venezuela anymore. Any Venezuelan news, unless, the country completely falls, then we'll talk about it. It's been smaller outlets, independent reporters that have brought news of Venezuela. You only thing, you might see something from Reuters or AP or something that, a brief article on how bad it is, and then that's about it. Again, they don't talk about, socialism's failing there. Okay, give me a second here. Now, when we look at all the issues going on, the biggest thing I think we still need to focus on, so what's going on here? What policies the federal and your local are doing? Because lately, Trump got in power, and a lot of these people that under Obama were pushing real hard, they wanted to just push the idea of nullification, have kind of calmed down under Trump. Well, he's our guy, so, we won't have to No. Just because your guy's in charge doesn't mean all of a sudden now government should have power. That's not, a good argument. We should nullify federal law just as much under Trump or any president. If Ron Paul was in there, we should still be nullifying federal laws. Because even under Ron Paul, he's not going to be able to get everything taken care of. Again, a little foot in the door. That's all that would be. And it would be up to local governments to continue to nullify federal law. If the states start doing it, and you get the right person into the president's or in Congress, enough people in Congress, they can put in the measures that would bolster nullification. they would make it where now agencies can't try to revolt against, nullification. You can't have federal agents go into a state that nullified, and pass recreational or medical marijuana. If you had a state that tried to nullify federal law, make it where the federal government, IRS, can't go in and try to bully them. That's what you accomplish. I wanted to get you this clip if I can find it. I know we are kind of getting towards the end of the broadcast here. If it will load. Okay. Let me just hit reload the whole browser here real quick. Okay. Just letting it load real quick. Reason TV seizing private property in the Trump era. Another thing that we should start looking at states to nullify. And one thing is there's ways to nullify federal government seizing. The state has to uphold its right to that property, and that the federal government can't hold the property. But let's go ahead and get to this. This is out of Reason.com or Reason.tv.
Eminent domain allowed the city of New London, Connecticut to seize a private owner's land and house.
Eminent domain is an absolute necessity for a country, for our country.
We shouldn't have to give up our property so somebody else can make money off it. My name is Suzette Kilo. I live in New London, Connecticut. And I am Kilo in the Kilo versus the city of New London.
17 years ago, Suzette Kilo was a registered nurse living in a pink house in a sleepy New England town. She would go on to fight a historic battle against the city of New London, Connecticut for trying to seize her property. Today, Kilo's story is more relevant than ever. In the late 90s, Kilo bought her dream home.
A little slice of heaven on the water, the best house she could find for her money. 7 months after moving in, though, Kilo was told she had to move out.
You see, the city of New London, Connecticut had other plans for Suzette Kilo's neighborhood, a new pharmaceutical research facility for the Pfizer Corporation. City officials said it would bring business and jobs to the area and started buying out homeowners.
I won't leave. Just absolutely. And unless they drag me out by my ankles, I'm not going.
Many homeowners didn't want to sell, so the city tried to use the power of eminent domain to get their land.
The practice of government taking private property with what the government determines is fair compensation.
Kilo and 6 other residents organized and sued on the grounds that it was unconstitutional. After 7 years, the case reached the Supreme Court, but the court sided with the city.
The ruling was fresh and very unpopular.
But not to one infamous real estate developer.
I happen to agree with it 100%.
I think overall, if the president of the United States thinks this was a good decision, then we should all be shaking on our boots a little bit.
That's Courtney Balaker, and she's the writer and director of a new film called Little Pink House about Kilo's fight to keep her home.
When we started this whole process of putting this film together 3 years ago, we had no idea that Suzette's most famous opponent would be the president of the United States. So it's pretty mind-blowing, and it really is just sort of a coincidence that we made this film and then he all of a sudden got in the race. I think people should be very concerned.
Eminent domain is an absolute necessity for a country, for our country.
Eminent domain is consistent with Trump's authoritarian approach to government, which makes this issue more relevant than ever.
Apart from putting you in jail or killing you, to take away your home or your livelihood is about the most serious thing that a government can do.
Scott Bullock was Suzette's attorney. We caught up with him at the film's sold-out premiere at the Santa Barbara Film Festival.
Cities and developers cannot go down this path again of taking people's property and abusing the power of eminent domain.
I think it's going to make a huge statement. I really do. I really do.
Not a lot of people have the energy to do it. Not a lot of people have the courage or the principle. And what struck me was it's not like she was this retired woman looking for a cause. She was exhausted, and this was the last thing she wanted to do, but she did it anyway because it was the right thing to do.
I'm freaking out. This land is everything I have, Jim. It's all I own. It's the only thing that protects me from them.
That's Academy Award-nominated actress Catherine Keener as Kilo.
She really captured Suzette's humility and aversion to the spotlight. And what resonated with her about this story was this concept of your spot, your place, when you find your place and you can really root yourself into that place, and how disruptive that is to somebody to uproot you against your will.
What's it like to see yourself portrayed in a movie?
Overwhelming. It's surreal, really.
Actress Jean Triplehorn plays Charlotte Wells, who in the movie spearheads the initiative to forcibly take Kilo's home to build Pfizer's facilities.
That character truly believed that what she was doing was right.
And she gives a voice in the film to all the typical rationales for seizing private property, namely creating jobs, economic revitalization, and restoring a sense of grandeur to a fallen industrial town.
Jean had a great way of describing it. This is a very misguided woman, someone who was on the right path but then went down the very, very wrong path to get what she wanted.
You see, the city didn't understand that it's impossible to put a fair price on another person's property, which is a major theme of the movie.
You know, I never noticed that locket. It's beautiful.
Oh,
yeah.
Thank you. It was my great-grandmother's.
Yeah. Would you be interested in selling it?
Oh, yeah. It's an heirloom. So
500, 1,000, 2,000. I'll give you. What would it take, Lynn?
Despite the disappointing outcome of the 2005 Supreme Court case, public outrage over the issue led many states to pass laws reining in eminent domain abuse.
IJ made tremendous progress with this case, and a lot of those laws would not have gone the right way if it hadn't been for IJ, but there's still a lot of work to be done.
Oh, and Pfizer's new facility? It was never built. After the city seized and bulldozed many of the homes in the area, Pfizer walked away from the venture. Today, the site of the proposed project is a wasteland.
But don't forget, eminent domain, they get a lot of money. And you need a house in a certain location because you're going to build this massive development that's going to employ thousands of people, or you're going to build a factory that without this little house, you can't build the factory. I think eminent domain is fine.
This is a movie about insiders versus outsiders. And if you're on the inside, then you have the power. But if you're on the outside, you don't.
That was from Reason.com, Reason.tv, and Reason TV on YouTube. Check them out. And again, you know, they never even end up using this property. It just sits there abandoned now. There's another little thing that isn't talked about enough that kind of plays into this eminent domain. And it's something that I think is just as troubling. Definitely from the cities that I see that are doing it. And that is annexation. More and more, these cities are aggressively annexing. I've seen one where the community came out full-fledged against getting annexed. It was a small township on the edge of the city. They liked it, how they had it. They had, the county took care of them pretty well. You got to choose if what garbage service you went through. You got to, have a nice big old bonfire if you had enough property in your backyard, and you didn't have to risk burning someone's house down or something. But, you were out of city limits. You had a little bit more freedom. Plus, you liked the services you got. And they stood up overwhelmingly against being annexed, and then the city kind of just goes, well, we're doing it anyways. The county kind of has laid down to the city all the time. They constantly lay down. They think that the city growing will help them, but what they don't realize is they're slowly being pushed to the side, and now they won't really have much say because everything will be city limits. Even though in reality, they got more say than what they think, but because when the city annexes, they allow the city to make rules. They will be overruled, basically. They'll go, well, we'll allow, fire pits up to 4 feet wide. And that'll be the county rule. And the city will be like, but within city limits, yours can only be 1 foot wide. A what? And must be gas powered. And at least 40 feet away from any structure or tree. Again, the county gets overruled because, well, within city limits, well, where are the city limits? Luckily, I watched that same city try to annex another section, and those people stood up against it, and it wasn't that they couldn't annex it, it's that they stood back from their position. They kind of held back on annexing for now. Basically, well, we got plans. And what I've seen for these plans, these big developers, one of them starts with the name of a type of stone, and a few other ones have been able to acquire a whole bunch of property in these areas that they want to annex. And they're putting in massive developments, a whole bunch of, housing areas, homes, they're actual houses, but they're putting in all these houses. And what they want to do is get more urbanite type people in these areas. Well, you're talking about people that have 40, 50 acres that live out there now. Just a residential piece of property might be sitting on 5 acres, 6 acres. Maybe a few homes might be on 1 or 2 acres. And then you have farms. Well, now they can take, 100 acres and put 50 houses up, 60 houses up, depending on what type of houses and how big. They can fit a lot of people and urbanite type people. So now you put a whole bunch of people into a smaller area and you're able to annex them. And the strategy is being done across the country. And what I've been noticing, the cities and counties that this is going on, one, tend to be Democrat ran. Two, they all have plans that are similar. And they even have similar names called, Vision 2020 or Vision 2022 or Vision 2025 or Vision 2030. And then you hear that Vision 2030 and go, oh, yeah, isn't that what they basically renamed and kind of rewritten Agenda 21 and called it Vision 2030? And then all of a sudden these cities have these plans that are called Vision 2020, Vision 2030, Vision 2022, Vision 2021. And they all have these strategies going on. And for me, just my personal belief looking at it, it's definitely a power grab. And it goes along with this Agenda 2030 that the United Nations is planning. And that's not good. That an outside governmental type of body can start manipulating our government. And they know what they're doing. Our politicians that go along with us, they might not be getting money out of it. What they're getting is positions of power. If anything, that's worse than being, paid to push these policies. Of course, some of them do get a little bit of a payday. They're going to get that when they leave, government. They'll get a job being a lobbyist or working somehow in one of the fields. Now, I'm going to try to touch on this a little bit. And what I'm seeing is I don't know if other people are seeing it, but I'm really starting to see it now more than ever. And it's the attack on independent and alternative media on the internet. And whether it be Google, Facebook, Twitter, whatever, they're all kind of getting pressured in one way or another. Well, if you look at so many companies and media companies and you start working back, you find parent companies, and you see the spider web basically from one central, follow the money. Basically, you're following it back to its final resting place. So when you see maybe an advertiser pull from something, you're actually seeing multiple companies pull from something, because there's usually a parent company. And I think what it looks like to me is there's many people and companies working together to silence alternative media on the internet, opposing, to a progressive agenda that you see on both right and left. And they're tired of the people on both sides, the left and the right, that undermine the common goal that the what I call the centrist, the people on the left and right that are constantly working together to get things passed. Those should be the people you worry about. They're always like, Congress needs to be working and passing, laws. No, they should be not passing law after law after law. That was never their goal. That was not the plan for Congress to do, is just continue year after year for hundreds of years to pass laws. It was to fix the wrongs that were being committed and the ones that they created. Oh, we passed this law and that didn't work. We need to repeal it. Have they ever, just start going through other than, prohibition? They repealed that, but do they go through and go, oh, this didn't work? No, they go, well, this didn't work. Let's write a new one. Hold on. If something works worse with the law passed, first thing you do is repeal it. Then you study it for years to figure out why things don't work. Oh, well, no, we got an agenda. We want government mandated healthcare. We want government controlled healthcare. We don't care why it doesn't work as long as we get to our goal. Single payer healthcare. All these things, if a lot of these companies get their way, won't be discussed online anymore. It's really a battle going on, and I think it's going to hit a lot of people unexpectedly, because we do have quite a bit going on right now. We got Syria, Afghanistan, North Korea, Russia, all the battles going on here at home. When does any of this start getting more attention? Does it get more attention? Or are we going to have this happen in the middle of the night? Believe me, the left and the right, the progressives are working on something. They don't like the fact that people like Rand Paul have a voice when they're trying to pass things. They don't, you had Rand Paul, one of the most outspoken, but he wasn't the only one. And they might go, here's one guy that opposes this. But a lot of the alternative media, they covered Rand Paul. And they covered everybody else that opposed it. And what you found out, what did the mainstream media tell you about that whole thing? That Rand Paul and the Freedom Caucus are the ones that opposed it on the right. What you actually find out when you went to alternative media is that, Rand Paul and the Freedom Caucus opposed it. That was like what? Between 13 and 15 of them. And then there was like 18 or 20 other Republicans, more than the Freedom Caucus, that opposed it. Oh, well, mainstream media didn't cover that. Mainstream media has basically kept the fire lit for the stuff not to get passed, for there to be the opposition. It used to be that people would be able to leave work and protest something really, really bad. People don't do it like they used to. What we do see is these younger, what I call, I like to call them adult children with nothing else to do but run around and start fights and crap with no real knowledge of what the hell they're doing or opposing. And I might actually agree with them on some issues. But mine's based on knowledge and information, not a talking point. Mine's based on history. We're losing that, and public school is not helping. The institutions are not helping. Private school has, in many cases, gone basically to a public school's curriculum plus a religious course if it's a private religious, but they're still doing Common Core type stuff. It's failing our society. That's why I urge people to homeschool if they possibly can. It's not really ideal for a lot of people. But in the state we're in right now, ideal is not what we need to be searching for. What we need to be searching for, what is best. What is best is we raise generations to know true history based on facts and be prepared for those that want to control and enslave them. And that goes for any race, any religion. And not to be hypocrites in, we oppose it here, but we don't here. I oppose other countries attacking us just as much as I oppose us attacking other countries. Unless it's in a defensive action, if another country does attack us, I think we should try to defend ourselves. Just as if someone attacks you, defend yourself. But that doesn't mean, well, I feel this person as a threat, so I'm going to hit them first. This person possibly could become a threat, even though they've never been threatening towards us. But they possibly, or they're a threat to their people. Are there people saying they're a threat? No, but we know they are. Oh. Or that country said that that government's a threat to their own people. Oh, really? What evidence? They said so. They said they're bad. They hurt their women. Who said that? This country. That country that just stoned that woman to death? Oh, yeah. I'm taking their word for it. There's a lot of resources out there to help with homeschooling. There are private schools that really focus on things like this. They're not as abundant maybe as, public and some, mainstream religious private schools. But homeschooling, how much information and ability they give you. You can even hire outside people to come in and do the tutoring, online courses, so you get to even see what they're learning. Hopefully, a lot of wrongs will be righted. And I hope the generations that are just kind of going along, maybe they are rebellious, but don't know exactly why. They've grabbed onto this movement because it allows them to rebel. But hopefully in the future, they will have a better understanding what to rebel against and not call for, don't call for more of the thing that is oppressing you. And that's basically what they do. They call for more of the problem and don't even realize it. I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. Don't forget, go to ucy.tv, scroll down to the bottom, click the Amazon button. Shop Amazon through ucy.tv. You get the same great deal, same great shipping rates. And at the same time, UCY gets a little kickback from that. That helps cover operating costs on the networks, and it's really crucial, definitely in this time where alternative media is being censored, or a lot of their funding is being pulled. It's really important that you do what you can, and this way you're able to buy things you normally would buy off maybe Amazon and get the really good prices and also support alternative media. There's also a support tab at the top. If you click that, you can donate to UCY. Every little bit helps maintain and hopefully grow the network. So, what little you can do to help is always appreciated. And don't forget, one thing I always tell people to do is, don't put all your eggs in one basket.